We talk about GNS theory on today's episode.
Hey, Frank.
What's up, Charles?
What's GNS Theory? Genius Theory? Am I dumb?
No, Charles, you're not dumb.
I don't like how long you paused there.
What do you want me to do about this, huh?
Say I'm not dumb.
I'm not dumb.
I should have thought harder about this.
You really should have. On today's episode of What is Tabletop, where bits are indeed real. I don't think Charles is dumb today. My name's Frank.
My name is Charles. I'm not dumb.
Well, have you ever taken an IQ test? I haven't.
You don't have to spell it out for me, Frank.
I was just genuinely asking.
I know what an ick test is.
And maybe I take back my statement. No. Well, honestly, I haven't ever taken one. I should, though, at some point.
I'm a college graduate, sir.
I'm also a college graduate. Do you have a master's degree?
No.
Cool. Then I guess we'll never know who's smarter.
And like that matters.
Anyway, we're going to be talking about something that you could possibly take a quiz for to find out. See, that's how it all ties back in together. Yeah, beautiful. That's right. Frank is making things up as we go, like all RPGs people should.
Yes, I feel a part of it.
And you should feel a part of our community by commenting, and subscribing. Thank you, Charles, for that layup.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Swish.
We definitely... Oh, swoosh?
Swoosh.
Is that volleyball?
So we're going to talk about sports now.
God, no, please don't. I can make my way through like normal conversations about sports. I can't do a podcast about it. I mean, I could. People don't want that, though.
Hey, that could be our thing.
You could be the sports guy. Hear me out. I did win my fantasy league.
Without trying.
Without even trying. And it's phenomenal. And
I'm
holding that over everybody's head. It's phenomenal.
And you should, as you should.
As I should.
I 100%. I support that decision because I think it's hilarious when someone gets roped into doing something they're not really sure about,
and they win.
and you barely make any moves, and you still crush the people. I'm like, it's.
And for those of you who actually care about sports, I won with a 8-6 win ratio. That's how bad I was, and I still beat people. Yeah. So goes to show you how bad everybody else is in comparison.
Yeah. Fantasy.
Honestly, I've thought about how do we make sports in fantasy stuff to make me actually interested in it.
You could take a page from Football Managers. All I can say there is a video game called Football Manager where you gotta manage.
We should probably stay on topic, Charles, and talk. What are we talking about?
So something called GNS.
So for those of you who don't know GNS theory, perhaps you are like a me and you don't know.
Mario.
I'm not Italian, canonically.
Canonically, he's not Italian.
So maybe you're like me, and you don't know what GNS theory is, and then YouTube decides to recommend to you a video by a guy named the Bountiful Mimic. Shout out to the person who gave us this, because it's possible to have some overlap with what he said, and I don't want people to think that we're stealing outright.
Yeah.
So anyway, Bountiful Mimic, thank you for showing me a thing that we honestly... I'm going to explain it to you, Charles, and you're going to understand it. And you're going to be like, this is literally what we've been talking about the entire time. We just now have a name for it.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So what's your first question?
My first thing is, what does GNS stand for?
Good job, Charles. He is smart. Look at that guy. He'll get a cookie later today. I did not bring any cookies with me. So GNS theory stands...
The internet gives me all the cookies I need.
So GNS theory stands for the basic three things that makes up RPGs: games, narrative, and what they call simulation. So
simulation.
So basically, the idea is: are you a gamist? Are you a narrativist? Are you a simulationist? Right. What is the main point of our hobby that you focus on the most?
I think I'm seeing the connection now.
See, look how smart you are. You're already figuring it out.
All right, go on.
Yeah. So basically, gamist, those people, Gamerism. Really cares about the mechanics of a game, right? If I can do X, Y, and Z, it's because I built the character right and I'm doing the right actions and being tactical and doing all these things. Narrativism is about telling a story. Who cares if I do the right choices and made the right character? Is the story I'm telling more compelling or not? And then you want to take a guess at what simulationism is. That's probably the only weird one.
Simulation, like how immersive it is.
Yeah. Does it fit into the world and break cohesion in that regard, right? Okay. So a great example of this is, let's just say you're going to be playing Pathfinder, right? And you get to make your subclass choice. Are you making it based off of the mechanics, the narrative, or how much it fits into the established lore of the world?
Oh. Okay, that's an easy question for me to answer, actually. Yeah. Mine 9 times out of 10 would be narrative.
Right. And so you would be like, which one fits my character right now?
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that you're asking the question of where my character is at currently, what fits that option means you're a narrative guy. Versus me, who might be like, I actually really like the mechanics of this thing.
Yeah.
That's more gamerism. You might have a GM who's going to say this subclass is not allowed. You can't be a necromancer because necromancers are outlawed in my world. And so only villains are necromancers, and I don't want anyone to be a villain.
Well, yeah.
Right? That would be simulationism. And so that's the main point between all of those. Now you're going to be saying, I'm kind of a little bit of all three. Yes. Think about it like a triangle.
Yeah.
You're just trying to figure out
where you fit in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Bountiful Mimic, in his video, he made a website where you can take a test and it's scales of like, which do you prefer, this or this or this? And you can do that. And then you eventually get like your little triangle flow chart on that.
I should check that out.
I was saying I tried to do it. And it wouldn't load on my iPhone. And so I was going to have all of our playgroup do it. And so we could all do it and be like, oh, look, this person's this person's that. Isn't this interesting that we found those out? So instead we're going to have to speculate, which is much more fun.
Why is Gamism so relevant or important to, playing TTRPGs?
Yeah, here's the thing. If you lean into the narrative and the simulation side more than the gamer side, recognize you are playing a game. Right. And you have rules and you have structures in place that the game provides for you to tell the story that you're trying to tell. It's very easy, especially if you're coming into this hobby for the first time and you're like, I'm just going to tell the best story I can. It's easy to then try to toss aside the rules whenever they don't fit the narrative you're trying to tell.
Right.
And what you're doing with that is almost unintentionally telling a worse story than if you just let the rules help it dictate it.
Yeah.
Right. Because like, here's the thing. If you just wanted to tell a story, write a book or play pretend with your friends. Like just go off and be like, all right, I have a space laser and okay, my space laser and your shield, if they, explode, blah, 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 blah.
That's called LARPing.
Yes. Even LARPing has the gamerism part to it, which is the physical aspect of fighting. And like, if you get hit with the arm, your arm is out and stuff like that. So there's still rules involved with that. There's still a focused element to that. Ultimately, it's easy if you're focused on narrative and simulation to think, what is the point of the rules? How do they contribute to it? But if the game is doing itself justice, the rules actually help facilitate the story and facilitate the world better than you honestly could in some capacity.
So what is the drawback of gamerism or gamism?
If you focus too much on gamerism, it's when you start playing a board game, right?
Yeah, you think you could win at that point.
Yeah, it becomes a us versus them mentality, and you got to be really careful about that. If it's just about the combat. Now, granted, everything we say has the huge caveat. If your playgroup enjoys that, keep doing it. If your playgroup enjoys it to where it feels like the GM is just trying to do things against us, keep doing it. From my perspective, it's not a fair fight because it's the GM is in charge of the world.
Yeah.
They could just say everyone dies, and it happens.
Yeah. So, the GM only has to follow their own rules.
That's like the downside of gamerism. Yeah. But like there's dungeon crawls and stuff like that that people really enjoy. Now, granted, there's board games out there that I think allow you to not have a GM, and so everyone can be involved in that, and you can still get the same, feeling of we're being tactical and all of this stuff without the need for all of that. So that's kind of why, like, if you're playing a TTRPG, if you go too far into the game side of it, you can start just wanting to be playing a board game at that point.
What about narrativism? What is a benefit, or how is that important to TTRPGs?
Yeah, so you're telling a story ultimately.
Yeah. And
again, depending on your system, which some systems do really good of having the mechanics influence the story you're telling, right? But some of them not so much. You might wonder, what am I even doing here? What is the stakes associated with this, right? I knew of a group when I was in college where they played with the same characters, and they would go into dungeons and kill everything, and then go into the next room and kill everything. Yeah. And then if a character died, they just came back. Right. Oh, okay. And you and I are both like, so who cares? Like, there's no stakes.
Yeah, there's no stakes. Yeah, it feels kind of boring. Again, if you're playing for a game, to play it as like a board game type stuff.
Because at that point, you're just gathering loot to like make your character stronger and do that stuff.
But even then, I think you got to be careful with that mentality. Nothing bad ever happens. If you're gonna play a game like that again. Then you just want to go straight. You want to go straight narrative. Then at that point, to be honest, then you can just say what you say happens.
Yeah, and again, like that's the thing where like narrative is important because it makes you as a player invested.
Yeah.
Right? Like my character's invested, therefore I'm invested in it. Right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between we're going to go fight the big bad evil guy because he's the big bad evil guy and we have to defeat him and we'll save the day and become heroes versus this is the guy who killed my father.
Yeah.
Right? Like Inigo Montoya in Princess Bride. He was not the big bad evil guy, the six-fingered man, but we all remember him because of the interactions between Inigo Montoya and him. And like that was his whole goal. And so that feels so much more impactful. That feels so much more satisfying to see him be defeated because of the build-up and the narrative that's associated with that.
Yeah.
And it's the same with RPGs where you as the GM, the games master, you can make your players feel that impactful, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is my villain. This is something from my character's backstory, or like my character has over the course of this game grown resentment for this other character, and I get to be the one who takes them down.
You want to invest as much in your narrative as you do your mechanics.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a game where it's just, again, you don't want to have a tabletop role playing game specifically where it's just a game. There's winners and losers. Yeah. But you also don't want to play a game where it's just straight narrative either. There's nothing of value there. You want to play a story that's designed that you're a part of as well. It can't just be, well, this is the GM story, and I think this is where we kind of get into the downfall of narrativism.
Yeah, if everything's for the sake of the story, then nothing. Oh, again, it almost becomes like, why are you playing a game?
Yeah,
right. Like,
why aren't you writing a book or reading a book?
Right. Like, so I've had the issue when I was first getting into this of like, this is my story to tell, and I'm going to tell it this way. Oh, the dice have determined that's not how it's going to go. Too bad. I'm fudging them. I'm changing them because I know what's better. And part of this game is improvisation. You have to be willing to roll with what happens, right? I have a great story of I had this big villain that they were fighting. It was in a Curse of Strahd campaign, and I had another villain in there that was going to come back. And I knew the players were going to fight her, but she had a clone hidden in Strahd's mansion. And in my head, I'm like, great, what's going to happen is they're never going to know. And then she'll come back, and it's going to be really cool when she comes back, and she's attacking the party. The party happened to find where the clone was. Now, I could have done some things and been like, no, you actually don't. But the integrity of, like, the rules saying they found it, let me reward them narratively by saying, here's this clone of the villain. You have the chance to destroy it before she does. Yeah. Now, there's, like, a very fun catharsis where they're fighting the villain, and she's like, there's nothing you can do to stop me. And then Zach Brooks, Dunkerton's character is like, we killed your clone. You're dying here today. And then she got super pissed and banished him, which became a running joke that Dunkerton's characters keep getting banished. But that's its own thing. But yeah, if I had only cared about my narrative of like, oh, I have this really cool moment down the line that's going to be really impactful, it almost left the really cool moment of them thwarting my plans.
Yeah, I think it's important to focus on that. The GM, while they're the overall storyteller, the players have a say in the dice rolls to change that story a little bit. Yeah. Sometimes it's not what you want it to be, and I think fudgy dice rolls. Again, I don't like doing it. I don't.
Very rarely should you
ever do it. It would have to be such a critical thing in your campaign and in your game to.
Or I would say even if it's like. It's a combat that's going a different way, and you're like, man, this is not like the atmosphere of the group right now is not good. I might need to like pull back a little bit. But fudging die rolls is a completely different video. If you want to see us do that, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. The next thing would be to talk about is simulation. So I know when I'm playing a game, I like to be immersed into it. Like I get into the world. So I want to know the lore. I want to know what's happening. I want to know what my character is and isn't capable of doing, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's easy to look at these three and think simulationism is the one that like sticks out and is like the weird, middle child of like who cares about this, but it's really the cohesive glue that puts RPGs together.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if the logic of the game mechanics does not go to the narrative, it's not going to feel right. If I'm playing in a fantasy setting where magic is scarce and it's really about like do or die situations, and then suddenly I pull out a gun and it shoots magic time bullets and we go forward in time.
Chronomancy.
Right. Sure, there might be rules for that, but like the it doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
right?
kind of feels out of place. So
Right, because like you can play a generic setting, or you could play something like Traveler, where like you can put all of these different mechanics into the thing. But if it doesn't fit the world you're working in, if it doesn't serve a better purpose for it, what is even the point? Right.
Yeah.
I have heard of people who will ban like certain things. Matt Colville has banned people using full elves in his D&D setting because full elves don't exist. And he's like, well, there's a reason for that. And it comes to like my philosophy of this and this and this. And ultimately he comes up with this idea of like meet in the middle, have a way where it's like, how can I play the elf I want to play and you still have your world be cohesive?
Yeah.
And that's where simulationism comes into effect. It's like, I have this really cool concept as the games master, and you have this really cool concept as a player. Can we find this way to make it work without
find some middle ground?
Right. And maybe the middle ground is one of you doesn't get your way.
Yeah.
But as long as you both come to that agreement, and that's okay. Yeah. But the importance of simulation is that it makes it feel like everything's cohesive, and it's not like something's just going to come out of nowhere. And how could we have expected that, because the world we were in was this way, and now it's suddenly this way.
Yeah. So ultimately, I feel like Gamism, your narrativism, and simulation theory, they all work. They need to work together.
Yes.
It needs to be cohesive, and because if you have too much on any of them, it's the game may feel lacking.
Well, one, recognize we're playing with other people. And so what I value and what you value is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
So yes, you need to be able to be fluent in all three a little bit, but also, it causes the game to not feel right.
Right.
It ultimately, what we just establish is if you go too far in the direction of any others, you're not playing an RPG. You're playing something completely different.
Yeah.
Right. Simulationism is a really fun thing, but if that's the most important thing to you and you're never willing to budge, and like you will get gut mechanics and change the narrative because it has to fit the exact world that you're in and the concept you have, well, like, then again, why aren't you just making your own basically lore and writing your own book, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, each of these things, again, they serve individually their own purpose, but they all need to work together for the common good of the game. And
that's why the test is good. It's not because it'll say
you shouldn't be playing with these people.
No. It's more to say like, oh, maybe this is where I'm lacking and I can work on it a little bit better, right? Or maybe this is where if I'm like more willing to give into like the mechanics side of things and not on the narrative side, okay, how can I start, backpedaling a little bit and stuff like that, and making it to where like my narrative players feel a little bit more satisfied versus my mechanics players.
Yeah, I think you have to have moments in your game for all of it, right? So like your combat is where you're going to see a lot more of your gamism and mechanics, I think, in there. And then maybe in some downtime, you'll find more of your narrative moments and, and storytelling things. And in your simulation, hopefully you're finding it throughout the entire campaign. There are moments, again, something I love that GMs will do. I believe you've done it before, where you just drop these little hints and things like here and there where, there's a bigger world around you. And it may not be relevant now, but like, oh yeah, I remember you saying something about this, 3, sessions ago. And then like having that's why it's important to take notes. That's a different video, but take notes.
Yeah. And again, having mechanics that feed into the narrative is great. Like there's many systems that we can play where it's like, obviously this mechanic is to influence the good of the system, right? Most Powered by the Apocalypse games have mechanics where it's about telling the story, and so they help with the narrative. But then you can have systems like in Star Wars with the Force die. Right. You can't use that mechanic in any other game because it's so tied to how the Force works in the Star Wars lore, and so that's a version of game mechanic and simulation pairing together and working really nicely. Is this really cool and unique system, this really cool and unique mechanic that you're never going to see anywhere else because it's specific to this lore setting. And now people, if they want to play in it, sure, they have to play in your specific world, but isn't that cool? Like that's how we get these like very unique and interesting worlds.
Yeah, and games for that matter, because now again, some of these games are going to be focused more on the game side of it. They're going to be more closer to board games. Some are going to be more closer to a book, a story that you're going to be a part of. And some of them are going to really put you into that world.
Yeah, so like Pathfinder is definitely the Gamism
Yeah,
side.
for sure.
It's really about the combat and like the mechanics and building a good character. Vampire is about the narrative.
Narrative 100%.
100%. Like combat happens, you don't want it to happen. It's more about like influencing people. Like the mechanics are really drawn towards that. And then we got paranoia, where it's about like the simulation side, because it's like you're living in a it is a dystopian future where everyone's crazy and you have 6 clones, and like from a narrative perspective, you're like, that's all over the place. From a simulation perspective, you're like, that I understand 100% what kind of game that is based solely off of that. Like you roll a die, and if you roll a specific face, friend computer shows up out of nowhere. And now suddenly I'm trying to hack the mainframe, and friend computer's
That's
like,
funny.
hello, I see you're trying to hack the mainframe. You're not supposed to be doing that, right? That's not what I'm doing. Really? That's what it looks like you're doing? No, I'm petting a dog. Oh, well, let me change your optical nerves so that it looks like you're petting a dog. And now the good news is you got out of that situation. The downside is you now have a permanent dog like on your eyeballs, and you can't, like, everywhere you look, you see this little guy.
Oh
Right?
gosh.
Crazy. All over the place. Not necessarily a cohesive game, like in a narrative.
So,
But super fun.
but yeah, again, they each have their own merits. And there are some games that do all three pretty well. You know, I know not everyone's a huge fan of 5e sometimes, but 5e does a pretty good job, I feel. Maybe not so much simulation.
No. Arguably, I think it does simulation better than it does narrative. Because
Yeah, I guess so. Because really, narrative is up to the GM at that point.
Because here's the thing: they will only make spells and certain classes based off of the world, right? We have subclasses in 5th edition that are like, this is only for dwarves. Like canonically, the subclass is only available to dwarves because it comes from a specific part of the Sword Coast in the Forgotten Realms, where the dwarves get to use this ability. So therefore, this subclass is only for dwarves. They do the simulation part right.
Yeah, you're right.
I think the narrative isn't necessarily there.
Yeah,
like, they have
I
skills,
think the narrative is pushed largely onto the GM too. So, and again, maybe you know of a game that's out there that does all three really well.
Star Wars. Let me see if I like Star Wars.
Star Wars is probably a pretty close example. With the simulation, the world already exists, so there's lore, there's things that exist. You know, it's things that happen. Again, and then the combat and the mechanics. There are things there. There are rules in place, and even the narrative. Again, because you're within this world. There's some guidelines.
It's just like your actions are dictated by the combat system.
Yeah,
right.
there are storied effects. So I would say
and that's why I'm excited for the Cosmere RPG, because it's the same group, and also on top of that, they're literally designing certain mechanics to be about how things work in Brandon Sanderson's worlds.
Which I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, and so I'm super excited for the Mistborn one specifically because I know I've read those books. It's so good. But it's gonna be interesting to see like how do they do that, because it's such a unique and interesting setting in place. How do they make the mechanics reflect that?
So, Frank,
let's
try to guess on what kind of players our friends fall into in our play group.
I think this is easy for some and difficult for others.
I think for me, I'm really easy to.
You're more on the narrative side.
100%. I don't think I've ever been shy about that.
I think I'm weird because I like when they all like. I literally like when the mechanics feed into the narrative, narrative feeds into mechanics, when the mechanics are simulations and stuff like that. I don't want to say like I'm a perfect in the middle, because I try to say that about literally every personality test, and that's clearly not true. I think I do lean more towards the mechanics though, because I so focus on that. But like I would say if it's the triangle, I'm like here, you're just slightly above.
Yeah, you're pretty close to being a dead center, I feel. But I would say you're probably close to the mechanics side, mostly because you're a forever GM.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I think you like things to be optimized.
I do enjoy that, and that's where I would land Zach Brooks with our play group as well. Again, we do like narrative and we do like cohesion, but ultimately we make very optimal builds. So, that's really the focus that we do for sure.
Let's talk about Evan. What do you think, Evan?
I think he's one of the hard ones to crack because he's our reaction guy, and so that makes me think narrative. But also at the same time, I've had enough conversations with him where he is very willing to make a character based off of the world we're creating.
Yeah, I was going to say, he falls probably somewhere between narrative and simulation.
I think out of all of us, he's the closest on simulation.
100%.
I don't know how far into that he is, but I think out of all of us, he's the closest on that.
And a lot of it just has to do with his willingness to play whatever we need.
Yeah, he's willing to...
Where can I fit into your world?
I mean, like, he'll have an idea for a character. So, for example, we had a character... in his last campaign. If you've seen the movie RRR, which Charles just got to watch,
So good.
Evan and I were like, it'd be really cool if you made Ram from that. And then as we made the character, he's like, nah, this isn't Ram, but I'm willing to change that. And that does fit more in the simulation mindset, I would think, than on the narrative mindset, for sure.
So we got Dunkerton next.
He more and more, I think he used to be far and away Gamism.
Yeah.
And more recently, he's slid back.
Yeah.
I think he's more like closer to narrative than he is to simulation,
Yeah.
but he's definitely slid back from Gamism.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the furthest along Gamism out of all of us, though.
Yeah. And then we have Jeffrey.
I do not know.
Jeffrey, I would go because he loves combat. He's going to be closer to mechanics, and he does want to optimize.
True.
Granted, he wants to. I know
he might be the furthest into Gamism.
I think he's the furthest into Gamism, and then Dunkerton is right behind him.
Here's the distinction: Dunkerton will make choices that's good for his character, even though he knows he shouldn't be making that choice.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey will always make what he thinks is the optimal choice, regardless of the character he's playing.
Yeah, and usually likes to play similar characters, if not the same character. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if they Jeffrey's probably closer to simulation because he is willing to bend things for the sake of the cohesion of the world.
He's more simulation Gamism, and then Dunkerton is more narrative or
Gamism,
Gamism,
for sure. But they're still pretty close to game.
Yeah.
Versus the rest of us.
Yeah, I think I'm the one person who falls just like narrative. Give me a good story.
And what's great is for the narrative people, it means whatever story beat, as long as it's an interesting story beat, they will hook onto it.
Yep.
Gamerism just means you need to have some compelling, not necessarily combat, but mechanics.
Yeah.
Something that's going to make them really enjoy the game.
And again, if you've watched other people play tabletop games, I'm sure the gamers, and I imagine the gamers who are like, why did you create this character this way?
Right.
You could have had such a more optimal experience.
Yes.
You could be doing this now, but you didn't choose this skill at this level. Now you're doing this. Now you're stuck, So, and I imagine that could be kind of frustrating.
Here's an easy way to tell if someone's narrative versus game. They keep failing rolls. What is their reaction? Is their reaction, man, I cannot get a good roll tonight, gamer? Is it, that's just how the dice landed. I'm really excited for the story. Narrative.
So yeah, at that point, there are times I'm definitely like a gamism.
Well, no, but that's and again, that's why it's
that's why it's more of a.
But you are much more likely to be like, oh, I got a bad die roll. Oh well.
Yeah.
Like for example, in our Traveler campaign, right? You guys were doing some investigative work. You rolled and you're like, okay, I guess I'm dancing. I got stuck dancing. You came up with the reason that you failed. That means your narrative.
Yeah, for sure.
Dunkerton's response was, why can't I roll well tonight?
Yeah.
Even though he had rolled 3 times at that point.
My Temu dice were letting me down.
So yeah, and then I would say simulation is probably in regards to a die roll is gonna just be just again it's
how the world works.
Yeah. They'd probably be the most apathetic towards it. I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
I think a narrative person's excited for bad die rolls. A gamer person is mad about it, and a simulation is just okay.
And I think you kind of just nailed all of our personalities with that explanation right there. Absolutely. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think you're more of a. I think that's where simulation comes in for you because I think you are more like, cause there are times you're like, oh, I want this to happen. Doesn't happen so you don't get angry and mad about it. You're like, it sucks, but whatever.
Yeah, and honestly, I try to make characters that are I like when they fail. Is it more interesting, right? The Fallout campaign where I made a character who thought he was smarter than he actually was,
but he had so much luck that it was such a. I loved your take on that character. That's why I was like, yes, absolutely, you can play that.
Right. So it would be something goes wrong. Yes, all according to my plan, exactly how I wanted it to.
I do want to play that again.
Yeah, it'd be fun. And again, if you want some examples, if you're more of a gamer type, try a Pathfinder, a Lancer. Mm-hmm. That's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, Lancer for sure.
Yeah, if you are a narrative person, any World of Darkness or even Powered by the Apocalypse
Fiasco.
Game, Fiasco is going to definitely be.
That's straight narrative.
Honestly, no, I mean that's simulation too.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. That might be more close to simulation
because it's more about the craziness of it.
The world, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Fiasco, Paranoia, the ones that you're like, man, I could not see us doing a long-term campaign.
There you go. Yes, long-term campaigns.
10 Candles, Dread.
Yeah,
there's super simulation.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right.
Could you do a long-term campaign? Sure, but it's really about in the moment. Dread is so much about the tension from pulling from the Jenga tower that
snap decisions and
yeah. So there's some examples for you guys. If you want us to go a little bit further, we can give you examples like maybe you're lacking in the gamerism spot, and we can go into a little more in depth of like what does it mean to like use mechanics to their fullest, or we could go into narrative or simulation a little bit more in depth. Let us know in the comments, and we can do a follow up to that.
And if you're new to our channel, thank you for checking us out. Please follow, check out our community polls. We have lots of them all the time.
Yep.
You can influence some of the things that we do on our channel.
Yeah, and we always get new subscribers almost every day, so we're really
we
appreciative of
love
that.
it. Thank you guys.
Yeah, so watch more of our stuff. Stay witty.
Stay witty and tell a story.
Tell a story.
I don't know.
We just talked about how like if you just want to write a book, write a book.
Write a book.
Write a book. And play RPGs.
Yeah.